Welcome to Off Code, the show where we ignore the cultural codes and have real and intriguing conversations regarding the Black community and ways we can move forward to human flourishing.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Off Code. I am Monique Duson.
And I am Kevin Briggins, and we are excited to be back with you guys for another week. Mo, how you been doing?
I'm good. I am good. I'm busy. I am excited that our book, Walking in Unity, comes out in just a few months, October 15th. And we are actually excited to share with you our book trailer. So you can find out a little bit about my backstory, about my ministry partner's backstory, and how our book actually came to be. Why don't we just take a minute right now and watch that trailer? Here you go. My name is Monique Duson. I grew up in South Central Los Angeles. Life was tough, but more than that, life was Black. Lessons that the streets taught me were secondary to what my mother instilled in me. Being Black. I was a Black child, and one day I would grow up to be a strong Black woman.
My name is Krista Bontrager. I was raised by a Christian mother in the suburbs of Los Angeles. My mother instilled in me a love for Jesus and a strong work ethic. She taught me that if I worked very, very hard, someday I would grow up, go to college, get a good job, and have a family. In 2018, Monique came to live with my family. I asked Monique a lot of questions about race and justice. Things like, what is systemic racism? Should every church be multi-ethnic? And am I racist because I'm white?
I welcomed Krista's questions, but persuading her to what I knew was true about America wasn't easy.
We had many difficult conversations. And even though she didn't say it directly, I knew Monique thought my family and I were racist. I felt sad and confused.
I was not confused. I saw Krista and her family the way I saw most white people, privileged and participating in racist systems of whiteness. One thing quickly became clear. We saw the world very differently. And either we were both going to change or we were not going to be friends.
Our worldviews were on a collision course.
Join us as we share our journey searching the scriptures and gaining a biblical perspective on issues like the multi-ethnic church, systemic racism, and how our nation became so divided.
And how we discovered a truth that is deeper than our cultural and ethnic differences, that Jesus makes cultural enemies into family.
Walking in Unity is coming October 15th from Harvest House. To find out more about our book, check out walkinginunity.com. Okay, Kevin, we've talked about the book. Let's talk about what we're actually talking about today.
Yep. I'm looking forward to this episode. It's the first time we've ever done this. It's something a little different. I hope everybody likes it. So what we're doing today is we're going through some of the comments from our old episodes, and we're going to answer some questions that have been asked to us. So sometimes it's hard to get through all the questions in the comment section. And so we thought, hey, let's just do an episode where we take some of these questions and just answer them in an episode. So that's what we're going to be doing today. Should be fun.
I'm excited. I think, people have written in with some good questions. And, I think we're taking questions from maybe 4 or 5 different episodes. We actually have 2 that came in from our Black Hebrew Israelite conversation. So let's get started. I'm going to read off the question and we'll take it from there. Our first question says, could someone give a breakdown on 1 Corinthians 6:9-11? Please explain if there are any laws pertaining to the list Paul provides. Many say we cannot keep the law. Doesn't that contradict Philippians 4:13? So Kevin, before we start to answer this question, I want us to look at both of these Bible verses in context. I know that there are very specific passages mentioned, but we're going to open it up a couple of verses more so people can see what's happening in the larger context of the verse. And so what we see in 1 Corinthians 6, let's start at verse 7, it says, to have lawsuits at all with one another is already a defeat for you. Why not rather suffer wrong? Why not rather be defrauded? But you yourselves wrong and defraud even your own brothers. Or do you not know that the unrighteous will not inherit the kingdom of God? Do not be deceived. Neither the sexually immoral, nor idolaters, nor adulterers, nor men who practice homosexuality, nor thieves, nor the greedy, nor drunkards, nor revilers, nor swindlers will inherit the kingdom of God. And such were some of you. But you were washed, you were sanctified, you were justified in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, and by the Spirit of our God. All things are lawful for me, but not all things are helpful. All things are lawful for me, but I will not be dominated by anything. Food is meant for the stomach, and the stomach for food, and God will destroy both one and the other. The body is not meant for sexual immorality, but for the Lord, and the Lord for the body. Kevin, help us understand what's happening here.
Yeah, so this person's question is really an issue about the law, right? So what they're asking is in 1 Corinthians 6, they said 9 through 11. They talk about those lists of the people who will not inherit the earth, right? And he's saying, basically, he said that we say that we can't keep the law. But he says here, Paul is saying that we should be keeping the law under those guys, under those things. Like people who don't do these things are in fact keeping the law, right? And so the question that they're asking is, are Christians, in what ways are we to keep the law, right? They said, are you or anyone able to keep the law as pertains to, the state and the city and the towns you live in? Do you obey traffic laws? And this person's question, they said, do you lie? Do you steal? Do you, sleep with your neighbor's wife? If you don't do these things and keep the law, or you keep traffic laws, then you should be able to keep God's law. That was the whole purpose, the point they're trying to make. And they quoted the passage with saying, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. So they're saying that, yes, you can keep the law. But they really don't understand what they're saying, right? They don't understand the law. They don't understand what the true issue is. Because if they did, they would know that, no, you don't keep the law. You do steal. You do lie. You do, it said, do you sleep with your neighbor's wife? Well, you could be like the Pharisees and say, no, I don't. I keep the law. But then Jesus completely killed that. And he said, hey, if you've ever lusted after another woman in your heart, you've committed adultery, right? You slept with your neighbor's wife. You coveted your neighbor's wife. If you've ever been angry with your brother in your heart, you've committed murder. You've broken the law, right? So they don't understand that the law simply reveals the heart, right? And so when you try to just make it like this legalistic thing of do's and don'ts and a checklist to say, I've done these things or I haven't done these things, you're missing the point of the law. The law exposes sin, right? And so when you understand that, even the idea of a following the traffic laws, imagine this, because what is the penalty for sin, right? Romans tells us the penalty for sin is death. If you've ever committed any sin, you are deserving of death. Now, take what the standard that Jesus made of what is the standard of keeping the law. Okay, if you've ever been angry with your brother in your heart, you committed murder. You've broken the law. Your punishment is death. Now, you might say you keep the laws in your town, but let's just say if every time your speedometer went over the speed limit by 1 mile per hour, you were sinning, right? How long would your rap sheet be? So even when it comes to human laws like that, we can't keep them perfectly, right? No one is righteous based on following the law because we've all failed in following the law. And so when we say no one can keep the law, that's what we mean. No one can keep the law perfectly. No one is righteous by keeping the law, right? And so that is what we mean when we say no one can keep the law. You can't keep it perfectly because the law condemns you. And so if you try to make it to where the law is like this badge of honor, the way the Jews tried to, I've kept all the laws, Christ completely destroyed that premise, right? By exposing where their heart really was, by exposing the idols of their heart, by exposing that they have not loved the Lord their God with all their heart, right? They have not loved their neighbor as themselves, right? And so by exposing that, it takes away any idea that that we can be righteous by the law, right? So that is what's going on in these passages. That is what the person asking the question doesn't understand, because they're a Black Hebrew Israelite. They believe that they are justified by following the law. They think they are righteous because they keep the law. And the law oftentimes is dietary laws and ceremonial laws and all of these different things that do not add righteousness, right?
Yeah. Something in what you were saying, or maybe just a summation of it, reminds me of Romans 3, 19 and 20. And it says, now we know that whatever the law says, it speaks to those who are under the law, so that every mouth may be stopped and the whole world may be held accountable to God. For by works of the law, no human being will be justified in his sight, since through the law comes knowledge of sin.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The law comes our knowledge of sin. We are not able to hold to the law perfectly. And that is the requirement. It is a perfect obedience. I mean, this is why Jesus had to come and die, because he was a perfect sacrifice.
Yep. And then the person is right. Yeah, his law is pure and holy and righteous. And it completely exposes that we're not.
Yeah.
That's why you can't.
Yes.
That's why you can't pound your chest, because it exposes you.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on. The next question is from episode 19, where we talked about Black disparities. My issue with the idea of systemic racism is that it is so vague as to be meaningless. If you took your car to a mechanic because it would not run and he told you it was a systemic problem, what would that mean? How do you fix that?
You want the answer if the scenario plays out and the analogy plays out, and we're gonna say, if that was your car, the people who would talk about systemic racism would say, you got to tear your whole car down because it's all corrupt. It can't be fixed, right? It must be torn down. And so you have to take everything apart, right? And then there's never instructions on what comes next, right? It's simply tear it down.
I think it's tear it down with a vision for something that's completely different. Yeah. And so, yes, the answer from the person who is truly a proponent of systemic injustice would see the injustice in every system. And because systems are interconnected, like the housing market, it directly connects to the banking system, which directly connects to, insurance. But then, if I want to get into the housing market, I have to have a level of wealth and usually of some form of education. So all of these things they would see as interconnected systems or interlocking systems. And so we need to rethink the system entirely to build something new. So yes, the answer would be to tear down the engine and build something new. Personally, what I see being torn down is, some big fancy car and they're going to replace it with a Prius. I mean, if you drive a Prius, don't take that the wrong way.
No, what's going to happen is you're going to break that engine down, and whatever this new thing you try to build is not going to work. You're going to be walking.
Basically, especially because, a lot of the breakdown is breaking down, capitalism or capitalistic structures because, capitalism continues to perpetuate wealth disparities, and looking at the benefits of Marx, even though, Marx didn't, for the Christian person, Marx didn't, support or uphold the idea of God. But what can we take from Marx that, supported the human dignity of a person? And so what they would say is, while we need to tear down, maybe not even the whole structure, but 90% of the structure of capitalism, we might be able to keep some nuts and bolts from the engine, the oil pan or something. We still need to look around and get a new transmission and new head gaskets and all of that. Look at me talking like I know something about an engine.
Yeah,
I
look
don't
at
know
you.
nothing about an engine. I'm just repeating things I've heard.
But no, that's good. But also, I mean, I think I'll say that it's vague for a reason, right?
Yeah.
It's because if you point out specific things that can be fixed, then people can fix those things. But when you just leave it vague and it's systemic racism, and it can only be measured by looking at disparities. So as long as there are disparities, that must mean there's systemic racism. It is a perpetual racket. It's a perpetual problem that you can never solve. We just got to keep doing the work. Buy my new book on this, right? Vote
Do buy our new book. It's not on systemic racism.
Vote me in the office another 4 years and keep on doing the good work, and fighting the fight. It's just a racket that, of course, there's no real things to point to that they're gonna fix because it's vague for a reason.
I do want to offer some distinction, though, between something like macro systems that people are always saying we just need to tear down the whole system. Every system is impacted, and maybe something like a micro system. So maybe, all of the judicial, system in America may not be impacted by systemic racism, but maybe there's a police precinct that where the majority of people are racist and they participate within their community that they surveil from a racist position or something like that. So I don't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater and be like systemic racism just doesn't exist. No, racism exists, and any person can be racist. And so that precinct that I'm talking about could be an all-Black precinct, patrolling or surveilling an all-white area. You know what I mean? So we just need to have a different way of looking at some of these terms and use a more biblical approach and a biblical lens. We see in scripture that systems can happen. When we look at the Hebrews or the Israelites, and there was a system in place not to give them straw to be able to make their bricks. Or when it was a Herod who sent out the edict to kill all the male children under 2. These are systems. These are ways that, a system is put in place to be able to impact a person to their detriment. But that doesn't just happen to minorities. It can happen to any person. And any person of any skin color can create a system. And so I think that it's important to really thread that out more and not just go along with the sociological terms or the cultural terms that are being thrown around right now. So our next question comes from episode 22, Marketing the Black Image. Oh, I remember that one. That was a good episode.
Yeah.
So Black people learned skills as slaves. Wow. It actually shows that Black people were actually resourceful and shrewd and did not need the government's help to move forward in life. No way the left wants young Black people to know that. And so this isn't really a question. It's more of just a statement that we thought could be a beneficial statement and kind of threading through a little bit more. I really appreciate the commenters, last line, that no way the left wants young Black people to know that. I feel like you talk about this a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to see if you wanted to share any thoughts about it.
Yeah, so to add context to what they're talking about, this was over that controversy over the curriculum in Florida that kind of talked about how Black people learned skills in slavery, and at post-slavery, they actually took those skills and became very successful in various areas because they had a trade, they had a skill, right? And so yeah, Black people, or some Black people, immediately did prosper in a way because they were able to use their own skills to start businesses and become kind of successful. And the reason, the person at the left doesn't want young Black people to know that, because it's a mindset, right? And if you think about people who came out of slavery, could have the mindset to, even in those conditions, to say, I'm going to take what I have and I'm going to be resourceful. I'm going to make a life for myself and my family. Then what excuse do you have today in these conditions, right? And so it's a mindset issue, because a lot of people in the Black community don't have that mindset, because we're constantly told that we're oppressed, that the world is against us. There's nothing you can do, right? And so when you have that kind of defeated mentality, it's been ingrained in you that no matter what you do, the man is holding you down. Systemic racism is holding you down. It stops you from even trying, right? And then those people who tend to be on the left can then use that continuous plight, the continuous underperformance of the Black community, to say, see, it's still the systemic racism holding them down. It's just evidence. It's just a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? That they enjoy by Black people not having the right mentality and going out and just completely crushing it, right? Saying that, no, I can do anything. I can do, and just taking that mindset and not waiting for someone to do it for you, not waiting for a handout, not waiting for a leg up, pooling your money together. I've heard old men talk about, like back in the day, they pooled their money together and started their barbershop, right? They didn't wait for a government grant so they could be able to start a business. No, they were thinking, how can we do this? And they were resourceful. We have lost a lot of that because we're too busy being angry about what we think someone else owes us. And until they give it to us, we just downtrodden and out, right? And then those same people who have instilled that mindset in us have said, hey, just keep on, let's keep on doing the good work and we gonna get it. And they just dangle the carrot in front. The carrot never comes, and we are still sitting or standing on the corner, waiting for that shoe to drop.
I agree with you, and I think there's more to it than that. When I think of, Blacks today, we are the fastest growing middle class. Black women are getting, upper division degrees or advanced degrees at higher rates than most other groups. I think that it is this idea of you always need to be fighting for the other person. You made it, but you're still oppressed because these people down here are still oppressed. Yes. And so you're always fighting for the proverbial Black person, yes, even though we are advancing in ways that, are amazing. Like, we are growing. Like, there's a lot of things that I would say is wrong with our community still, but even the person who, might live in the hood or, have some circumstances that aren't optimal are still going out and getting degrees. And so to me, it's a conversation of, I want to know who are we staying woke for? I was listening to, it was something that came through like my Instagram feed, and it was Kamala Harris talking about you need to be woker or wokest. Yeah. And, I'm just saying, be more woke than you were yesterday and be more woke tomorrow than you were today. And I'm like, be woke for who? Mm-hmm. Who are we being woke for? Because we are excelling, but then there's the narrative that I would agree with you on, they continue to sell down to us to keep us fighting because there's always somebody else. Yeah. I'm trying to figure out where Pookie at.
Yeah, and you made a distinction. I don't know if you realize you did it. It is Black women who are getting degrees and advanced degrees and doing really well. And in the person's question, I believe they said the left doesn't want to hear young Black men. That's the issue. Is young Black men aren't enjoying the same success as a lot of Black women, And we've seen this play out in the dating scene. We didn't pull any questions from our Kevin Samuels episode, but that's driving a lot of the economic gap between Black women and Black men, and Black women who don't want to date down to a man who's not at their economic or educational level, right? And so you got this disparity between Black women and Black men that's hard to it's caused a real issue, right? Because these Black women are very educated and they have excelled and they've got their own house and their own car and their own money. And then you have men who don't have those degrees, who aren't climbing the ladder as fast or as many of them as Black women are, right? And so, yeah, it's caused a lot of issues. And so, yeah, I think there is something in terms of Black men needing to hear this and understand this message about and to empower and encourage them. Now, a lot of them are. I see it on the internet all the time. But yeah, in terms of, in general, there's a huge gap between Black men and Black women in that success ladder.
I wasn't going to bring this up because I was trying to really stay in the lane of not petty.
I done did something.
But okay, so and we're going to get back to the questions, but I was talking to Krista about this yesterday or earlier today. I have seen so many Black men on social media in response to Kamala Harris taking the Democrat nomination, saying things like, she ain't got my vote. I ain't voting for no Black.
Whoa.
It's hostile. And I was wondering, and this ain't got nothing to do with what we talking about, but I just got to know your thoughts.
Babe.
Do you think that, because I personally don't, I'm gonna let you know my bias right now. I think that that her nominee is revealing some, I won't say all, some Black men's issues with Black women. I hear all kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
They just all gonna do, they bossy, they itches, they this, they that. I would never.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to say, fix it, Jesus. Am I the one who is just making this up?
Okay, there's multiple angles to this. So yeah, there is a general tension between Black men and Black women. You see it in the dating sphere, right? You know, the online dating conversation, you see that tension, right? You also have a lot of men, not just Black men, but Black men as well, have woken up to the understanding that, well, what feminism has done, right? And it's a pushback towards this feminism. Roland Martin wearing that shirt saying, vote like a Black woman, right? They talking about, the Democrat Party talks about all the time how it is Black women who saved democracy. If you heard the white women for Kamala Zoom call, that's what he's talking about,
when that
right?
woman said, I done tapped you in.
Yes. Because
who doing the tapping? Anybody tapping?
Because it is Black women who overwhelmingly vote Democrat and left, right? Black men to the same level don't, right? And this idea that you have to follow Black women, the matriarchy, right? The Black community is run by Black women. You know, our church is full of Black women. And to a degree, Black men, to a degree, are tired of it. They're simply tired of it, you know, and there is some pushback. None of it is healthy. None of it is healthy. But this idea that you have to just continue to, as Roland Martin said, vote like a Black woman. No. But the whole I'm with her stuff, no, it's the feminization of Black men. And we're like, no, we tired. We tired of this, right? What is wrong with just being a Black man and voting like a Black man? What is wrong with, why can't we lead? Why is always our women won't let us lead, and they're combative and they got attitudes, and like black men are tired, right? and this political thing is just adding to it. Like, no, you're not gonna get me on your train telling me I gotta run up behind a black woman. No. So it's all unhealthy.
It is. And I just think it just continues to show some of the issues that are present in our culture that I don't believe whiteness gave us, and whiteness sure can't fix, or getting rid of whiteness won't fix.
No.
Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to know your thoughts, because I was like, before I go too far, before we go to our next question, let's hear a word from our sponsor, Harvest House, and their upcoming conference, Unshaken.
Unshaken 2024 is coming. Join 3 of the most influential voices in cultural apologetics, Natasha Crane, Frank Turek, and Elisa Childers, as they equip Christians to live for Jesus in a world increasingly at odds with biblical Christianity. At Unshaken, you will join hundreds of others who are seeking to navigate the intersection of societal pressure and biblical truth, covering topics such as deconstruction, social justice, sexuality, and many more. Unshaken will teach you what the Bible has already said about the social issues we face today, and equip you to stand firm in God's truth. The Unshaken Conference will be visiting Buffalo, New York, and Austin, Texas in fall 2024. For details and tickets, visit unshakenconference.com and use code FRIEND20 to get 20% off your ticket price. Join us this year for an experience that will embolden and encourage your faith. That's code FRIEND20 at unshakenconference.com. See you there.
If you are in the Buffalo, New York area, come and see Krista and me at the Unshaken Conference on September 21st in Buffalo, New York. You can find out more information by going to unshakenconference.com. Okay, let's go to the next question. Ooh-wee. Okay, this one is from episode 16, Exposing the Lies of Black History. How is it that West Indian men and women, they might or might not be talking about Kamala Harris, can excel as an oppressed minority, and yet American-born Blacks lag behind? These folks didn't come here with big money either.
I mean, but for clarification, she is of Indian heritage. Her mom is Indian, as is an Asian, but the West Indies, the islands in like the Caribbean, the black people, the people who come from the black people who come from there are not the same as African Americans in the United States, like descendants from slavery. Even though they had slavery in the West Indies, there's a difference, and when the difference it shows up in the results, and the difference is their cultures are different, right?
Yeah.
The cultures in the West Indies are different than the cultures within the South, right?
Yes.
And so Thomas Sowell has written about this, and he talks about it. He used this example of these 2 groups of black people. Both are descendants from slavery. Both have black skin. Yet in the United States, one does well and one doesn't. The answer can't be racism, because they're both descendants of slaves. They're both dark-skinned, except one does well, one doesn't. Why? And his answer, and I believe he's right, is culture, and the culture that they were around. And black people who are from the United States, that are from the South, a lot of things we deem as black culture is not really black culture. It was taken from redneck culture, or white redneck culture. And so I've often said there's not a whole lot of difference between the hood and the trailer park. It's very similar cultures, and we get very similar results. People talk about poor schools, and we just look at the inner city. The rural schools are just as bad, and those kids are failing just as bad. Like, it's the same issues, right? Mm-hmm. And so the issues are the culture, and as blacks adopted a lot of the white redneck culture that we were around coming out of slavery, and over time, and we adopted those values and mimicked things that we saw. And there's a great video There's a clip from the Joe Rogan show, and this guy is talking about Thomas Sowell and this argument, and he talks about Ebonics coming from England, and yeah, he starts talking about there's a certain part of England to where they speak in something that's very similar to Ebonics. There's a very similar speech patterns, right? And so we look at those things. Oh, that's something that's Black. It's like, no, it's not. It's not. It's something that we adopted, right? And so yeah, just understanding that. So why is that one group does well and one doesn't? It is culture, right?
It definitely is culture. It definitely is. And I think it's important to talk about the fact that you can get people with the same skin color and have very different cultures. Even just here among the States, like you grew up in the South and I grew up on the West Coast.
Yeah.
There are cultural overlaps, but there are a lot of cultural distinctions.
Yeah.
You done fried some pound cake. Also, that takes Big Back to a whole new degree. I love avocado toast and sushi. It's a coastal
Yeah, we
thing.
different.
You know what
It
I mean?
is.
We different.
It is.
We different. But we both know about Big Mama.
Yeah.
We both know about Nana. You know
Yep.
what I mean? So there are definite cultural overlaps too. I would say that more in the macro culture, but then when we look at some of the micro culture distinctions that can happen even from area to area, a Black area like South Central Los Angeles, when I was growing up, was much different than being in Oakland.
Yep.
You know, which is in Northern California. And so again, it cultures vary, and different cultures promote different ideals, and some of those ideals are good, true, and beautiful, and some of those ideals are wicked.
Yep. And I will say this too, we do a very disservice by trying to lump things together and calling it white or white culture. Because when you look at England and how people settled in the United States, the people who settled in the South were not the same as the people who settled in the North. Right? You had those Puritans up in the North with Puritan values and a very different culture than those who settled in the South, in the slave South, right? And that's played out even somewhat today between whites, and how Northern whites will still kind of look down on a Southern white, or if you have a Southern accent, they view you as uneducated, right? And so because they're different cultures, it's not even about skin color. Right. Yeah. And so we look at someone like Booker T. Washington. What made Booker T. Washington from the South different? You had missionaries from the North, those Puritans, come down to the South and to evangelize and educate Southern slaves. And Booker T. Washington learned the value of education, and he wanted an education. Right. But he didn't get that from his Southern environment. He got that because people from the North came to the South to teach those values, right? And so at the end of the day, it's culture. It's not about race. It's not about, the people from the West Indies had a higher intellect. No, it is culture. What do you value? What do you desire, right? And when you weren't raised in that Southern redneck culture, yeah, you had different values to excel that didn't hold you back with bad habits and not knowing how to handle disputes and an honor culture, right? And all of those different things. And so, yeah, long-winded answer to culture.
No, I think it's fine. But I also want to say, that doesn't mean that all parts of Southern culture are bad.
Oh, absolutely not. No, absolutely not.
I would love to be Southern some days.
I'm Southern.
You
I thank God every day I live in the South, right? Because the North completely lost its mind, right? As a Christian man, I'd much rather be in the South, right? But I also understand. I mean, it was somebody made a video and they were just talking about how they came to the South for the first time, and they was just talking about how everybody say good morning. Everybody's so friendly, and yeah, it is that way, right? From the North, everybody's kind of like frowned up and nobody speaks, and no, I know it's a generalized stereotypes, but yeah, there is Southern hospitality is a real thing, right? You know, people
Until somebody say, bless your heart. It's different.
But even the fact that somebody says bless your heart in a way that's instead of just being straight up to your face and just saying,
Yeah, because you come out to Los Angeles, you're gonna get the straight to your face.
yeah, somebody's like, look, you stupid,
Yeah.
right?
Basically,
And it's like, oh, bless your heart.
it might be me.
But no, the South. But no, it was just talking about some of those values that lead to success, right?
Yeah.
The valuing of education and all those types of things. They were different based on where you lived and grew up.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's still the same today.
Absolutely.
Values and culture changes from house to house.
Yep.
Okay, let's go on to our next question. This one comes from a highlight reel called, Is Marriage an Expression of White Supremacy? The question says, is it sad to start off with the premise that capitalism is white supremacy? If Black people really start believing that, then how will they ever establish financial freedom?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, but we just got to talking about culture, right? Mm-hmm. And what your beliefs and value in education, it turns out different. Yes. If you start off with this belief that capitalism is white supremacy, then yeah, you're not going to participate to the fullest. You're not going to do the things that's going to lead to financial freedom or financial success. And then you will continually point to things like the wealth gap. But it's because you're not doing the things that over time build up, wealth or build up financial freedom. And we see this all the time, not just in terms of like, oh, capitalism is white supremacy. Things like marriage is white supremacy. Mm-hmm. Speaking correct English was being white. Getting good grades in school. Mm-hmm. Yeah, good grades in school, you were acting white. Like all of those things, if you take that mentality, what is the opposite of that? What are you going to end up being? What are you going to end up doing? Right? And so, when you have those beliefs, they become self-fulfilling or self-defeating, right?
Yeah. I definitely want to make a distinction between capitalism and crony capitalism. This idea of, people buying people off or, things like that, like things that don't represent the good, true, and the beautiful of capitalism. Not to say that, capitalism is this, completely biblical idea, but I think we do see the idea of like buying and selling in the scripture, private property in the scripture.
Private property. Yep, absolutely.
We see those ideas in the scripture. And so we, that's, I think that the ideals of capitalism, if it were to, truly live out, I think what capitalism could be, again, not this crony capitalism and not the capitalism that's impacted by, selfish sinners who, want to get the best out for them. I think we would have a model that's more closely related to scripture than things like socialism. Yeah. And so, when we look at marriage when we look at capitalism as just being something that is white or a part of white supremacy, that automatically puts us behind. I'm automatically starting to question, well, I'm Black, so do I want to participate in white supremacy? Am I hurting other Black people by participating in white supremacy just with the capitalistic structure overall? And now when I marry capitalism to marriage, it's all bad, because then by default, marriage becomes a part of white supremacy.
Yep.
And I mean, that we can look at the marriage rates among Black women. I think it's 1 in 4 Black women will ever get married.
Yeah.
And so what does that mean? And what is the alternative? Like you asked, well, it's the alternative that I don't get married, but yet I still have sex, and now I am, sinning against God and against my own body. Or do I...
And still bringing children into the world.
And that was going to be my next point. You know what I mean? And so here we go. And now I have children, but I don't have two incomes. All the while, I'm taking pictures of my singleness and my kids with my iPhone that I got through capitalistic means.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I want to say this too. I want to get to the heart of when people say capitalism is white supremacy, what most people don't understand is that the term blackness does not mean what people think it means. Blackness simply means Marxism, right? So if capitalism is whiteness, then what is blackness? It's Marxism. It's socialism, right? That's what they're trying to say. You don't want to be in capitalism because that's whiteness. That's white supremacy. Blackness is therefore Marxist. And if people only understood the effects and influence that Marxists have had on the Black community, on Black leaders, on even your most, the civil rights movement, W.E.B. Du Bois, the NAACP, the Southern Poverty Law Center, all of these organizations and people are Marxists. And when they write their books and they put out their propaganda and they talk, it's all Marxism. Liberation theology is Marxism. Yeah. Critical race theory, Marxism. It's all Marxism. And Black people walk around and they change it from Marxism and label it blackness, and you embrace it and walk around with it on your shoulder. You don't even know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. You just ingested it and thinking it's some kind of black. Oh, and it's the irony of it. All of those ideas came from someone white. They came from Europe. Right?
That is true.
We talk about blackness like this is something from Africa. Like, no, you co-opted it from other Europeans. It's just another European ideology.
Yeah.
We walk around here with a raised fist like it's black. Like, man, go on somewhere. You adopting that German ideology. Come on, claiming it's black. Bro, go.
You know what? We're just going to go to the next question. Next question. Okay, this one comes from episode 16, Exposing the Lies of Black History. They say, this is fascinating information. It begs the question, what necessitated Black Wall Street? Was it anti-Black racism or was it race baiting?
I think we agree that. You look at that point in history, of course, it's anti-Black racism. You're talking about coming out of slavery and into the 20th century. A lot of, Black people were not, slavery didn't just end and Black people all of a sudden right in the middle of society. It took a long time to get to where we are here in 2024, right? And so coming out of slavery, Blacks had to make their own way. Right, we started our own universities. You're talking about Booker T. Washington, Tuskegee University, which is right down the street from me. You talk about all the other HBCUs that were started over time. You're talking about Black banks and all of these types of things. Yeah, segregation, and I'm going to say this as something that is something you shouldn't say, but I'm going to say it. One of the good things about segregation and discrimination is it forced us to be resourceful on our own, right? It forced us to say, hey, we got to do for ourselves, right? And we started Black business. We started Black banks. We started, Black Wall Street, and we were doctors and lawyers, and we started our own universities to train our own people. Because we had this kind of self-determination type attitude, right? Because we were forced to. And so, what necessitated Black Wall Street? Yeah, it was the conditions in which they lived in coming out of slavery. They had to be resourceful on their own and pick themselves up. There wasn't a mass government program that was, the efforts of Reconstruction, the promises of Reconstruction never paid off, right? They reversed course. The 40 acres and the mule and all of those types of things to help Black former slaves get on their feet and get going. all of those things got taken away. And so, yeah, we just had to be resourceful. And to the credit of those people, man, they were super resourceful, and built some really good things. So that we can look back and be proud of.
I agree. And, I do agree that it was definitely anti-Black racism when you have, the end of Reconstruction, and then you have the Great Migration of Blacks, Black flight, Black people leaving the South, in droves to go up north and things like that. And so, yes, I would say, it was this anti-Black racism and wanting to keep my kids safe and live in peace and things like that. But then it was also what you're talking about too, is this dogged determination of like, we gonna do something. We are gonna be something. We are not just, the ex-slaves that are now just gonna live, as wanderers. They had goals, they had plans, they were getting married, they were raising their family. They had reason to live. Because Black Wall Street happened in the early 20s.
Yep.
Like the burning, I believe the burning of Black Wall Street happened in 21.
23, I think, something like that.
So it's the very early 20s. It was definitely before 25.
Yeah.
And so if you think of the end of the Civil War happening 1864, 65, that's what, 1875, 85, 95, 1905, 1915. You're less than 60 years out from slavery. And you have Black businesses, Black doctors, Black owned, like Black establishments. Like you have a Black Wall Street less than 60 years out from slavery. Some of these people who had these Black establishments were slaves at one point in their life. They're the children of slaves. And so, yes, it was definitely the Great Migration. It was that definite, force up, but it was also that determination that we are going to be something. We are going to be better. We know who we are. And, I love that. And I think it definitely shows a distinction between where we were then as a people, less than 60 years out from slavery, and where we are today.
Yeah.
Over 150 years out from slavery. What are we doing except, and this might sound like moaning about the Black community, and I don't mean it that way, but we are constantly looking for or talking about a handout, or talking about what are you going to give me, talking about how are you going to repay me for my education, and are you going to forgive my loan, and you need to do this and do that for me. When the people who were the real slaves, less than 60 years out, are, running Black Wall Street.
Yep.
I can't make it make sense.
Nope. But I do want to highlight race baiting was a big part of it too, though. And what I mean by that is, you probably heard this quote from Booker T. Washington before. It is from 1911, and it is amazing how you could have taken this from the 1960s, or you could have taken it from 2024. But even back in 1911, this was Booker T. Washington said. Remember, Booker T. Washington is a former slave. He said, there is a class of colored people who make a business of keeping the troubles, the wrongs, and the hardships of the Negro race before the public. Having learned that they are able to make a living out of their troubles, they have grown into the subtle habit of advertising their wrongs, partly because they want sympathy and partly because it pays. Some of these people do not want the Negro to lose his grievances because they will not want to lose their jobs. That can be any race. That's Jesse Jackson. That's Al Sharpton. That's Ibram D. That's Ta-Nehisi Coates. That's old girl with the 1619 Project. That's Joy Reid on MSNBC. That's all these folks.
Yeah.
This man wrote this in 1911. People understood that grievances could get you paid. And we don't want to lose the grievance because we don't want to lose the hustle.
Yeah.
So both things existed at the same time.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. All right. I think we are at our time.
Man, That was good. We had some more questions. We might do another episode like this.
We did. We do have more questions. I know there are more questions even than, what we pulled. You guys, thank you so much for joining us on another episode of Off Code. We hope that we answered some of your questions. Let us know what you think about our answers in the comments. We do check the comments. Also, if Off Code has blessed you in any kind of way, please consider supporting the Center for Biblical Unity today. Your support helps to keep the Center for Biblical Unity open and talking about race, justice, and unity from a historically Christian perspective. We are so grateful for everyone who supports the Center for Biblical Unity. Kevin, it has been real. This was a good one.
It was. And I also want to encourage people to continue to leave comments, because I think we're going to do more episodes like this where we pull comments and questions from the comments and do these episodes. So if you have a question you want us to kind of, maybe answer in an episode like this, put it down in the chat.
Please do. All right. Thank you so much.